In the small town of Blackridge Hollow, the fog never seemed to lift. It curled around the pine trees and settled over the rooftops, as if the land itself wanted to hide something. The town was home to a pack of wolves, who had lived there for longer than anyone could remember, following rules that had been passed down for generations. Among them was a 16-year-old boy named Eli Hawthorne, who believed, with his whole heart, that he was nothing special. Eli was thin and quiet. He kept his head down at pack meetings, and rarely spoke unless someone spoke to him first. Other boys his age had already begun to show signs of strength, agility, and confidence that came naturally to wolves preparing for their first full shift. Eli showed none of these things. He stumbled during training. He flinched at loud noises. Pack members his age would walk past him without a second glance, and the older wolves treated him as if he were simply not worth their attention. His father, Daniel Hawthorne, was a kind but tired man who held a low rank within the pack. He worked long hours at the lumber mill and rarely talked about Eli's mother, who had passed away when Eli was only 5 years old. Whenever Eli asked about her, his father's eyes would soften with sadness, and he would change the subject. The only thing Eli truly had of his mother was a pendant made of strange gray metal, etched with symbols that no one in the pack had ever been able to explain. She had given it to him just before she died, holding his small hands in hers and whispering words he had been too young to understand. She had told him to never take it off, no matter what. Eli had kept that promise for 11 years. The town of Blackridge Hollow was led by an alpha named Cassian, a tall and commanding man whose presence made every wolf in the territory stand a little straighter. Cassian had earned his position through strength and discipline, and under his leadership, the pack had grown larger and more organized than it had been in decades. Some wolves respected him, others feared him. Few questioned him, because questioning Cassian rarely ended well for the wolf who tried. Life in Blackridge Hollow continued as it always had, until the night the northern moonstone began to glow. The moonstone was an ancient relic kept inside a stone temple at the edge of the territory, a place few wolves ever visited except during important ceremonies. It had remained dark and lifeless for as long as anyone could remember. According to old stories, the moonstone would only glow when something significant was about to happen, something tied to the very beginning of their kind. Most wolves in town considered this nothing more than a legend, a story told to pups before bed. So when the moonstone suddenly began to shine with a soft white light, panic spread through the pack like wildfire. Cassian called for an emergency gathering at the temple. Wolves from every corner of Blackridge Hollow made their way through the fog-covered streets, murmuring questions among themselves. No one knew what the glowing stone meant, but everyone could sense that something important was unfolding. At the heart of the temple lived an elderly woman named Marith, the pack's seer. She had been blind since birth, yet she possessed a kind of sight that went deeper than eyes could offer. She had served as the spiritual guide of Blackridge Hollow for as long as anyone could remember, and even Cassian, who trusted very few people, listened carefully whenever she spoke. When the wolves gathered before her, Marith lifted a rolled scroll so old and brittle that small pieces crumbled away as she unrolled it. She explained, in a slow and steady voice, that the scroll told the story of a prophecy buried generations ago, one the founding packs had chosen to forget out of fear. The prophecy spoke of a bloodline believed to be extinct, one that traced back to the very first alpha who had ever walked the earth. It said that one day, a sign would appear to reveal the one true descendant of that bloodline. The sign, Marith explained, was a pendant forged from a rare metal touched by starlight, one that had been hidden and passed down quietly through generations of mothers who feared what would happen if anyone discovered the truth too soon. As Marith spoke these words, a strange warmth spread across Eli's chest. He looked down and saw that his pendant, the one his mother had given him so long ago, had begun to glow faintly beneath his shirt. No one noticed at first. Eli stood near the back of the crowd, frozen in place, his heart pounding. He told himself it was simply a trick of the light from the moonstone. But the warmth against his skin only grew stronger, and a strange pull tugged at him, drawing him closer to the front of the temple. Before he understood what was happening, Eli found himself stepping forward, weaving through the crowd of confused wolves. As he reached the open space before the moonstone, the glow of the ancient relic suddenly intensified, bathing the entire temple in white light. At the same moment, ancient markings carved into the temple floor began to shine beneath his feet, patterns that had not reacted to anyone in over 300 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Wolves stepped back, unsure of what they were witnessing. Cassian's eyes narrowed as he studied the boy standing at the center of the temple, the same boy he had never once paid attention to. Marith, despite being blind, turned her face toward Eli, as if she could somehow see exactly where he stood. "It cannot be," she whispered, though her voice trembled with something that sounded almost like hope. Cassian was quick to dismiss the idea that this overlooked, unranked boy could be anything more than a strange coincidence. He argued that the moonstone's reaction meant nothing without proof, and that allowing rumors to spread unchecked would only create chaos within the pack. To settle the matter once and for all, he proposed something that had not been used in generations: the rite of blood and moon, an old ceremonial trial said to reveal a wolf's true nature. The pack elders agreed that this was the only way to know for certain. Eli, terrified, but desperate to finally understand who he really was, and why his mother had given her life trying to protect him, agreed to take part in the rite. The days leading up to the ceremony passed in a blur. Eli barely slept, his mind racing with questions he had never thought to ask before. Why had his mother hidden this pendant for so long? Why had she never told him anything about where she came from? His father, when finally pressed, admitted that he too had only known pieces of the truth. Eli's mother had come from a distant pack, one she rarely spoke of, and she had always carried a quiet sadness with her, as though she were running from something she could never fully escape. On the night of the rite, the entire pack gathered once more at the temple. Marith led Eli to the center of the room, where the ancient markings on the floor still bore the faint outline of light from days before. She explained that the rite would strip away anything that had been suppressing his true wolf, allowing his real nature to surface fully for the first time. Eli later learned that, for years, certain herbs had been mixed quietly into the food given to pack members of unclear or unwanted bloodlines, herbs that dulled their senses and slowed their growth, ensuring they never grew strong enough to challenge anyone in power. It explained why Eli had always felt weaker than wolves his age, why his shifts had always felt incomplete, like trying to breathe through a thick blanket. As the ceremony began, Eli felt the haze that had clouded his senses for years begin to lift. It started as a tingling warmth beneath his skin, then grew into something deeper, a pulse of energy he had never felt before. He fell to his knees as wave after wave of sensation rushed through him, his vision sharpening, his hearing expanding to catch sounds from far beyond the temple walls. When his shift finally came, it was unlike anything the gathered wolves had ever witnessed. Eli's form grew larger and more powerful than expected, his fur shifting into a striking silver-white color that shimmered under the moonlight pouring through the temple's open ceiling. Several elder wolves gasped, recognizing the color from ancient paintings within the temple, paintings believed to depict the very first alpha who had ever lived. The pack stood in stunned silence, struggling to process what they were seeing. Cassian's expression hardened. He had expected the rite to expose the boy as nothing more than an ordinary wolf with an unusual pendant. Instead, it had revealed something he could not simply dismiss. Refusing to accept the outcome, Cassian insisted that the rite was incomplete and demanded the chance to test Eli's strength directly, claiming that true leadership could only be proven through challenge, not ceremony alone. The elders, uneasy but bound by old traditions, allowed it. What followed was not a violent battle, but a test of endurance and will, conducted under strict supervision by Marith and the pack elders, to ensure no harm came to either wolf. Cassian relied on years of experience and brute strength, while Eli, still unfamiliar with his newfound abilities, struggled to keep pace. For a long moment, it seemed as though Cassian would easily prove his point. But something shifted. As Eli focused, calming the storm of fear and doubt inside him, he found a steadiness he had never known before, a quiet strength that came not from anger, but from finally understanding who he was. He held his ground, matching Cassian's challenge with a calm confidence that surprised everyone watching, including himself. The elders called an end to the test, declaring that Eli had proven himself capable of meeting the standard required by the prophecy. Cassian, unwilling to accept this outcome, attempted to challenge the decision further, insisting that the pack's loyalty belonged to strength alone. But something remarkable happened. One by one, members of the pack, even those who had served Cassian loyally for years, began to step back from him and toward Eli, not out of fear, but out of an instinct they could not fully explain. It was as though some deep, ancient part of them recognized Eli as something the pack had been missing for a long time. Seeing the shift in loyalty among his own people, Cassian realized that continuing to fight against the outcome would only damage the pack further. With quiet anger but no further resistance, he agreed to step down from his position, choosing instead to leave Blackridge Hollow and start anew elsewhere, away from the pack he could no longer lead. In the aftermath, the temple grew quiet. Eli stood at the center of the room, surrounded by wolves who knelt before him, not entirely understanding why they felt compelled to do so, but trusting the instinct nonetheless. He felt overwhelmed, unsure of how to process everything that had happened in just a few short days. Marith approached him slowly, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. She told him the truth his mother had never been able to share while she was alive. His mother had not hidden him out of shame or fear of what he might become. She had hidden him to protect him, knowing that revealing his identity too soon, before he was ready, could have placed him in great danger. She had waited, hoping that one day the prophecy would find him on its own terms, when the time was right. For the first time in his life, Eli understood the quiet sadness he had always sensed in his father, and the protective love his mother had carried for him, even from beyond her passing. He realized that being overlooked for so many years had not been a sign of weakness, but a shield carefully placed around him until he was ready to step into who he truly was. In the weeks that followed, Eli slowly adjusted to his new role within the pack. He did not seek to rule with fear, as Cassian once had. Instead, he focused on listening to the wolves around him, learning their concerns, and working to rebuild trust that had been worn thin over the years. He visited Marith often, eager to learn more about the history of his bloodline and the responsibilities that came with it. His father, though still adjusting to the sudden change in his son's life, stood proudly beside him, finally able to speak openly about the woman he had loved and lost, sharing stories Eli had never heard before. Through these stories, Eli began to feel a connection to his mother that he had missed for so long, understanding her sacrifice in a way he never could have before. Word of what had happened at the temple slowly spread beyond Blackridge Hollow, reaching other packs scattered across the region. Some were curious, some skeptical, and others quietly hopeful that the old prophecy, long thought to be nothing more than a forgotten legend, had truly come to pass. Eli Hawthorne, the boy who had spent his whole life believing he was nothing special, slowly grew into a leader unlike any Blackridge Hollow had seen before. He led not through intimidation, but through patience, understanding, and a quiet strength that reminded the pack of something they had lost touch with long ago. He carried his mother's memory with him in everything he did, determined to honor the sacrifice she had made to protect him. And though the road ahead held many uncertainties, Eli faced it with a steady heart, knowing that the bloodline once thought lost to time had not disappeared at all. It had simply been waiting, quietly and patiently, for the right moment to be remembered.